So we're going to go slightly off topic or off plan slightly, which is because there are two big issues at the moment in recent times, which is the by-elections that we had in Stoke and Copeland, but more pressing than that is local business rates, which are absolutely skyrocketing, and it's causing a lot of businesses consternation. So my question to you, Andrew, would be, what would you or the LPUK recommend that we do about that?
Well, the LPUK follows the standard libertarian text that all taxation is theft, mainly due to the fact that it's taken at force. If you don't pay, you go to jail or you're fined heavily. Now, at the end of the day, taxes are fine if they're actually delivered by consent. I can't think of anybody in any business community and anybody who actually values having a high street and diversity of businesses, valuing people from local authorities queuing up outside a small sweet shop and saying, right, we need to increase your level of taxation by N amount percent, especially when an awful lot of that money is actually going not to providing services, which could be negotiated between the local authority concerned and the shopkeeper or the business owner as to where this money is actually being spent. Unfortunately, where a huge chunk of this money is actually going to is to fill in the black hole that is in the public servants' pension scheme, which has been largely underfunded for the last 30, 40 years. It's a true scandal, and at the end of the day, the stopgap measure that Saeed Javid is actually bringing forward is to let's give people a subsidy to actually pay them taxes.
Let's give them back the money.
Let's give them back the money.
Yes.
So it's a very bizarre way of actually going on. The Libertarian Party would have business rates stopped. It's a taxation on jobs. It's a taxation on business. And literally you actually get to the point where you're going to have businesses just ceasing trading because they just can't afford to pay the taxes and the staff. This coupled with, it's another issue completely, with minimum wage, which is actually killing jobs. And if the priority of the state is to have jobs, they're going the best way about actually killing them, other than actually creating more accountants, more lawyers acting for them, dragging business owners through the courts to force them to pay rates or business tax that they can't possibly afford. It's lunacy, and we're fairly fortunate, and I never thought it would actually happen in my lifetime, where we would actually see a government actually panicked into actually saying, hang on a minute, we're gonna have to head this off. Tax is starting to become a real problem. So I'm pleased to actually see that it is an issue that's actually finally come to the fore.
Yeah, and it's very interesting what you say about the minimum wage and living wage, because there's a pub local to me where they actually already pay their staff a living wage, or what they define as a living wage, but essentially above minimum wage. They give them holiday time and all that sort of stuff. Whereas most people probably working in your average pub would get just the minimum wage, and that would be it. And because of these business rates, and I think theirs have gone up something like a couple of 100% or something ridiculous, they're now potentially going to have to close the business, close the pub, sack all these people, and then what comes in their place? It's actually
and then on the other side of that, these people then who are actually part of the productive economy are then forced to actually go and claim the dole.
Yes.
How does this help anybody? It's lunacy, and this is where we actually come to, and it's something we'll probably deal with later. Is state corporatism. Is literally we're trying to have an economy that is actually being run by central planning, by decisions that are made by probably a couple of hundred people sitting in and around the walnut desks of Whitehall, making decisions that should be taken at local level. Going back to where my starting point was, business rates really need to be actually set with business people in conjunction with the local authority. Let the business people ask questions. Going back to a few years ago when I was a councillor, we had the ridiculous situation where completely illegally, virtually every authority to a greater or less extent had invested in Iceland because they were promising 4 to 5% over the odds returns. The rules were quite straightforward, quite understandable. The money that you actually invest as a local authority has to be instantly convertible into cash for the benefit. It wasn't. It was parked in a country that was outside the EU. And literally the local authority, the area I lived in, were maintaining for years afterwards, they were maintaining this money was actually going back, was going to come back. They were purely relying on the fact that central government were going to bail them out. I will never forget the early morning phone call I had from the district auditor's office and said, I've seen this report that you've prepared, and this is dreadful, we can't do this. And I said, unfortunately, you can't investigate this. And the man on the other end of the phone was most perplexed. And I said, because your authority has also invested in Iceland and lost the money. And I think the total amount of money that was actually lost in Iceland through negligence was £1 billion. To now come back and actually say to business, well, effectively, you're going to have to replace that money that we foolishly lost. Unfortunately, a lot of what goes on in local government is not very well reported, and there is no negotiation between the people who are actually funding this, because they just feel they're having the gun put to their head and says pay up or else, or you end up in the county court. I am pleased, and I'll say this again, that taxation and local taxation is now coming to the fore as a major problem. And the speed in which, say, Javid backed down was incredible. And I see great hope for the future in this.